Cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Before I start with the talk, there's some acknowledgements I have to give. A lot of the content that I'm going to be speaking about comes from work that's been done by Dr. Maslach and Dr. Leiter on occupational burnout. They have been some of the leaders in this field for a long time. The Etsy operations team and my friends and family who helped me get through a pretty bad burnout experience. So we're going to be talking about three things. We're going to talk about what occupational burnout is. I think if we're going to be discussing this topic, it's really good to get like a grounding in what this thing actually is, what it means. I'll talk about a little story of the burnout I went through a few years ago, and then we'll talk about how you can actually overcome this and stay sober. So what is occupational burnout? It's easier. It'll be a little easier if we define first of all what it isn't. Occupational burnout isn't when you just feel tired. A lot of people think when they get exhausted they're burning out. It's not just a feeling of being tired. It's not feeling unhappy with what you're doing. There are always times when we feel happier or more or less happy with what we're doing. It's not when you want to take a break from what you're doing and do something different for a while. That's normal. That's everybody does that. You're not burning out if you want to do those sorts of things. And it's not when you feel bored with your job. All of these things individually happen to almost everybody at different times in their careers, and they are not what burnout is, but they are things that we quite often attribute and say, oh, well, I'm feeling very tired, I must be burning out. Burnout actually has a very well understood definition, and the term occupational burnout was coined in 1984, and the definition talks about three aspects of our work life: exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. When we are feeling very exhausted, and when we are feeling very cynical about our work, and when we are actually very ineffective in trying to get our work done, these are the three things that we look at when we're trying to say, okay, is somebody going through occupational burnout? And it turns out when you are suffering from occupational burnout, in the vast majority of cases, usually about 90% of cases, it's difficult to tell the difference between occupational burnout and clinical depression. So this is the kind of thing that we're looking at today. Burnout is caused by, and this is credit to Dr. Maslach, who I mentioned earlier. As Dr. Maslach found that burnout is caused by a mismatch in one or more of these aspects of our lives when it comes to work. To have a healthy work experience, you need to have a manageable workload. You need to have good job control and autonomy in what you're trying to do. You need to feel rewarded for your work, for doing what you're doing. You need to feel like you're treated fairly, not discriminated against. You need to feel like you have really good values alignment with your company, and you need to feel like you're part of a community. When any of these start to get mismatched, that's when we really feel like we're starting to burn out. As just an example of this, hands up if you like being micromanaged, right? Nobody does. And job control really goes down to whether you're being micromanaged or whether you have autonomy in trying to get your work done. But surviving burnout's easy, right? You just work less, smile more, everything will be great. That's all you have to do? No. There is a path to too soon. I'm sorry. Little bit. There is a path to burning out. There is a way that there's a process that you go through when you're going to start burning out, and this is really where I like to say this is where the dragons are in the burnout process. Some of this might get a little bit dark, a little warning ahead of time. Burnout is a 12-step program. And you may not go through these steps in order. You may not go through all of them. But these are the things that happen to us when we start to burn out. You usually start with a compulsion, a need to try and prove yourself, your work, your worth. In order to do that, you usually start working harder, working longer hours. You start ignoring priorities. You start this whole work-life balance. Don't worry, I'll work a few more hours and I'll make it up on the weekend. I'll just spend a little more time with the family then. You make excuses for it. And as things progress over time, you start getting a little bit more cynical. You may start blaming other people for things that are going wrong. It's not your fault that things are taking long to get done. If only other people would help me, I'd be able to get this big project completed. Hands up if you felt like this, right? I would expect most people, right? This is a very common thing, especially in our industry. We go through these things. It gets worse. As you start working harder, as you start trying to prove yourself more and more, and now you're working longer hours, you're getting more tired, you get to a point where you almost succumb to sort of a sunk cost fallacy. You've put in so much effort to this. Your work has to succeed. You cannot let it go. If you do, people will think you're failing at what you're doing. It's the opposite of what you wanted. You wanted everyone to think you're really good at this. So you start working even harder. Now you start making more excuses. You start blaming your workload. You're too busy. There is too much to do. If only you didn't have this much work to do, or if you didn't have these distractions, you'd be able to get your big project done. You start to withdraw from your non-work life. You start to think about this thing that you're trying to get done all the time. If it gets bad, you start having dreams about it. It's happened. And usually somewhere around this point, this can have taken, when you get to about step 8 here, it can have taken months to get here. That's pretty normal. And now people, your peers, your friends, your family start to notice that there's something wrong. May not know what to do yet, may not know if it's a serious problem, but this is where people start to notice that we're going through burnout. You really become ineffective now because you're working till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Then you have to get up and you have to do it all again. Emotional withdrawal sets in. Things are getting pretty serious now. This is where the real feeling of sort of hopelessness happens when you're burning out and you just want to quit and run away. It can get as bad as sort of step 11 and 12, really bad. I mentioned earlier, there's very little difference between occupational burnout and clinical depression. At its serious stage, this is where it happens. At the very end, you're in like absolute full burnout, spiraling out of control. Okay, it's a little bit intense, I'm sorry. Make it a little easier, we can look at a cat for a moment. But it's good to know this, it's important to know this, because if we don't know how we burn out, how do we fix it? So I want to give a story of burning out. This is something that happened to me about 3 or 4 years ago. It started in June of 2013. I decided that I had a simple project that I wanted to complete. No big deal. We just have this one thing we use that's kind of closed source in a black box, and I want to replace it with like this nice open source thing. And it's cool. Everyone likes open source, right? Everyone likes free, right? It'll be easy. I'll just do it, I'll swap them out, and it'll be great. Talked to the team, everyone thought it was a good idea. Okay. Turns out this new system had a really steep learning curve, so I had to spend some time learning about things, which is also great because I like learning. I like picking up new stuff. This new thing is Elasticsearch, if anyone had, yeah. But it was lots of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I read more about it, as I tried to do more, I thought, I can do this. I can use this to prove that I'm a really good engineer. I can make this switch happen. But looking back on it, I'm not sure who I was trying to prove this to. My team didn't need me to prove that I'm a good engineer. My manager didn't need me to prove I'm a good engineer. People in the community didn't need me to prove I'm a good engineer. I already had, I like to think I have some, pretty good reputation. Who was I trying to prove it to? No idea. So I started by working a few late nights. A couple of times a week, I might work till 7 in the evening, 8 in the evening, 9 in the evening. It's no big deal. I'm not going to do anything else. It's not like I'm going out. I've got a family and got kids, busy with things. I'll work a few late nights. I was also the only person who was working on this project. And in hindsight, that was probably not the right move. But it meant that I was keeping everything I needed up here in my head. And it was easy for me, because I didn't have to share this with anybody else and explain it to anyone else. I could just keep moving on it. And if things start taking a little longer, I'll just work a little bit harder. That's the solution, right? Then around September, summer vacation was over. I mentioned I had kids. Downside is now I'm not able to sleep in if I'm working till 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to get up at 7, take the kids to school, get them ready, and then start my day. And as a result, I start feeling more tired. Okay, I can't do as many things at home, so my family helps out. And I'm explaining to them that this is really important, I have to get this done. So they're like, okay, we'll help you out, we'll pick up more of the slack while you get this done. It's not going to last forever. In December of 2013, I find that I'm completely exhausted all the time. So I'm running into sort of step 5 in our program right now. The learning has been pretty difficult. It's, Elasticsearch, it takes a while to get used to it. But I've done it. I think I'm at the point where I understand how the system works. Great, now I can roll it out. And everyone around me is very proud. Yes, well done, Avleen, good job. And that made me feel good. Problem is, it also kind of enabled me and made me want to do more of what I was doing. Fast forward a few more months, in March, because of this exhaustion, because of this constant tiredness, I'm starting to make less progress. I'm starting to show more inefficacy. It's getting difficult. And no one around me is helping me with this. This is the weirdest thing. I look around and everyone's got their projects to do. And I'm starting to feel like I've put in a lot of time and effort to this. Why isn't anybody on my team helping me with this? Secret is that other people were, but I couldn't see that. I was so sort of focused on what I was trying to do. It was impossible to see that other people were trying to support me, and actually I wasn't letting them. I'm starting to feel ineffective now. I'm starting to feel like I'm not able to get my job done. I'm not able to achieve things that others are, not having any success. And that makes you feel bad, right? You don't feel like you're helping the team out. You don't feel like you're pulling your weight. Few more months go by. I'm still trying to chip away at this, but I've given up. There is nothing more I can do. I'm not sleeping well. Work is seriously depressing for me, to the point where I just don't want to do it anymore. Normally, when people get to this point, they leave. They leave their job, they go somewhere else. I didn't even feel like I could do that. I started feeling hopeless to the point where I was almost suicidal. It got bad. Fortunately, I didn't do anything. I'm afraid of sharp and pointy things. But the feeling is there. The feeling that there's nowhere else to go. It's there. It gets that bad. Fortunately for me, one thing I didn't realize is that there was a little conspiracy going on where I couldn't see it. People weren't conspiring against me, though. They were conspiring to help me. And this, at the time, these are members of the Etsy Ops team. One of whom is sitting right here. Hi, Mike. And I owe them a lot. I owe them everything. Because they noticed that there was something wrong. And they started working to fix it, to help me. I work remotely. I live in Michigan. The company is in New York. So I travel back and forth. At that point, I was traveling every couple of months. And one day I turn up in New York and I look at my calendar and there's an entry in it. It says tea and chat. Okay. I like tea and I like chatting about things. Maybe I'll tell from my accent. I'm from a place that enjoys a lot of tea. There were three people, on this invite. Myself, my manager, and one of my colleagues, Laurie. Laurie is also British. So as I'm going through this, I'm thinking, I wonder what's wrong with Laurie. I'm like, there must be something up. And so I spend the entire morning, this was at 3 o'clock, I spend the entire morning writing down lists of all the things that I think might be wrong with Laurie that I can help him with. And we go outside and we chat. It turns out the problem's with me. I had no idea. And what was supposed to be an hour-long chat turned into a 3-hour intervention. I cried. I didn't have anything left to give at that point. I didn't know what to do. But they did. They had seen what was happening and they knew that I had to stop behaving the way I was behaving if I was going to recover from this. 2 years of stress and anxiety and depression about what I was doing just all came out over the next few days. And shortly after that, I took my first vacation in like 5 years. But it was because they made me do it. And what I learned from this is that vacation is really good. It's very important to helping us avoid burnout. It's one of the first things that's important to helping us avoid burnout. But you need to take a good chunk of it. You can't just take like a week and be like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere, do something for a week and come back. It takes you a week just to disengage your brain from what you're working on. And I learned that family and friends are very, very important. The support that they give is important. And you need a life outside work. So after I took this break, I thought, okay, great. I'm back. I'm not burnt out anymore. Took a vacation. Let's get back to doing things. Unfortunately, my team wouldn't let me do that. They knew that if I started working long hours again, if I started focusing on this project as the sole owner of it again, I would just immediately fall back into the place I was in. So we decided that the way to recover from this was to take small steps. Have small victories, feel small successes in doing things, little tickets. Doesn't have to be with the thing I was working on. Make a user account. Clean up some disk space. Anything that actually provides a sense of completion goes a long way towards helping people recover from burnout. And there are definite concrete things that you should be doing, and we learned these as we went through this, and we've applied these steps to help other people recover from burnout as well. The first thing is to take that list of 6 factors, the 6 connections to your work life, and find out which of those you have a disconnect with. Do you have too much work? Happens. Do you lack autonomy in getting it done? Can you not actually do things the way that you think they need to be done? Do you feel that you're not rewarded for what you're doing? And reward doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be a benefit. It can be many things. But there has to be something that you feel you're getting back for doing your work. Do you feel like you're treated fairly? Are other people getting treated differently to the way you're getting treated? And this sort of goes to the heart of almost discrimination. Do you feel the place you're working at is aligned to your values? I feel really aligned to the job that Etsy, to the mission that Etsy has to help people. But if you don't have that connection, are you in the right place? Do you feel like you're part of a community? Is the team you're working on one that you want to be a part of and see it go somewhere? Or are you just somebody who's turning up to work and doing things and then going home and not having that sense, that those relationships there? Find ways to reestablish those connections. You have to start also by building that self-confidence. I mentioned that when I got back to work, I started doing small tickets. Any small thing that gave me a sense of completion, of satisfaction, that, okay, I can actually do things, I am valuable. Those are the important things that'll help people start to recover from burnout as you start to fix these 6 factors. So we'll go through those very quickly again. So workload, a good question to ask is, are you too available? It's very easy to say I have too much work, but it's equally good to ask, are you too available? If people come looking for you to do something on a regular basis, are you too available? Do people feel like they can just walk up to you and you will do whatever they need whenever they need it? Is there too much pressure to get things done? We all have pressure. Who's got a huge to-do list that they're never going to get through, right? Yeah. Everyone, we all have things we need to get done. The work will never end. But if the pressure to get it done is not in line with the importance of the work, it's not going to be a good match. Are you micromanaged? These things, I've been micromanaged before and it sucks. I don't like it. No, I don't think anybody actually does. But it can often be an opportunity, right? Micromanaging can be flipped on its head. If somebody's micromanaging you, it's because they need a lot of information from you, or they think they need a lot of information from you in order to do their job. And you can turn that around by proactively providing a lot of information. Some people might say it's called controlling the message. It's not really. It's just engaging with people and helping them get what they need so that they don't have to watch over you and pressure you all the time to get things done their way. Do you have weak leadership? Again, it's another thing that happens. It's nobody's fault. Some people are strong leaders because they have a lot of experience. Some people are not strong leaders yet because they need the experience and the tutoring on how to be good leaders. It's an opportunity. It gives you an opportunity to step up and share some of those responsibilities with people. Are the teams you're on ineffective? Right? If you have ineffective teams, things aren't going to get done. You're going to feel like you have no control over your job. Rewards are kind of difficult. Nobody likes asking for more money. It's kind of a weird thing. Everybody wants to feel like they're treated fairly, that they're getting something reasonable for what they're doing. But it is an important conversation to have. You should feel comfortable talking to your manager, your leaders about this, if you don't think you're getting what you need. Fairness is a fun one. A lot of it seems to stem from disrespect and discrimination. But we're finding over time that as we increase diversity in our industry, it's a very difficult thing to do, but we're working on it. This kind of just goes away by itself, the issue of fairness. People are treated more fairly because of the work they do rather than other factors. There's a long way to go with this. We've got a very, very long way to go. But think about diversity in your teams, in your company, as a way to address fairness. Community is pretty cool. I like to think of myself as being a member of many different communities. I have my social community. I have an open source community, many open source communities. I have the community which is my team that I work on. And in those communities, everybody behaves in different ways. But you need to watch for certain behaviors in order to repair the community aspect of this. If people are acting in divisive ways, splitting things in order to sort of control different aspects of groups, imagine divide and conquer, it can be very harmful to that sense of community, and it can really add very strongly to people burning out. One of the things I would super recommend here is if you've never been to a conflict resolution workshop, see if you can find one. We had one at Etsy years ago, and when we were going to do it, I thought this is going to be one of those crazy little workshops that you have to go to, and you're going to go there, you don't really want to do it, and at the end, everyone's going to go, oh, well, thank God that's over. Conflict resolution, it turns out, is incredibly helpful because it teaches you two very important things. The first is how to talk to people about difficult topics, and the other is how to listen to people who want to have a difficult conversation with you. That's all it is. But if you can't do that, if you can't figure out how to have a difficult conversation with somebody, you're never going to be able to build relationships that give a sense of community. And the values alignment, I think that kind of that mostly speaks for itself. You need to feel like you have shared goals and common goals with your company, that you as an individual and your team and your organization are all working towards the same thing. If all 6 of these aspects are in balance, people feel good about what they're doing. They don't feel stressed out about their job. They don't feel like they're burning out. But as soon as one of these starts to chip away, all of these could be great. But if you feel like you're not getting treated fairly, everything else is going to come tumbling down. Everything can be great, but if you don't feel like you're getting rewarded, that can be one thing that undermines everything else. All of these have to be in balance. If there's one thing that I would ask everyone here to take away today, it's that your greatest responsibility is help your team stay sober. Not necessarily to look out for yourself, which you should do, but this is a team effort. You can't survive through burnout unless you have everybody around you helping and supporting you. Helping and supporting you avoid burnout in the first place. It's nice to be able to recover from it, but if you can avoid actually getting burnt out, that'd be fantastic. There are some signs that you can look for in other people in your team. And think about this as we go through this. I'm certain you will find there are people on your team right now who are exhibiting one or more of these. And they may be starting to go through those steps of burnout. The first is mood changes. Somebody who used to be happy, get along with lots of people, suddenly feeling very cynical, feeling unhappy about the work they're doing, not believing that it can be done or that it's the right thing, and feeling this way about maybe all aspects of their work. Maybe they're being a little bit less effective. They used to produce a lot, now they don't produce very much at all. Are they making silly mistakes, or what we would think are silly mistakes? How could they do that? Can't believe they forgot to run that command before they, disabled replication on the database or something. This is a little trivial thing. When those things start happening a lot, it can be an indicator of reduced efficacy. Are they tired a lot? Are they showing up late to meetings? Are they, not doing the things that you would expect from someone who's, full of energy? If you see these signs, very, very simple things to just help nip this in the bud very early. Encourage vacation. I mentioned this, No, we don't necessarily all have great vacation policies, but this, you cannot work for years and years on end without taking a break. It just can't be done. Everybody needs a rest. Help find tasks for them to do that are very tightly scoped. Small things that have a defined beginning and end. This might sound silly, but ask these people for answers to questions that you already know. It gives people a sense of belonging, a sense that they're needed for something, even if you know the answer to it yourself, and you just ask them for their opinion, for their advice, their help. It can really help someone feel like, yeah, I'm wanted here. I don't have to feel like I'm alone in this. I'm needed. I have something that people around me value. And over time, start looking for bigger things to take on. I would recommend anyone who's going through burnout, or if there are people on your team who are going through burnout, there is one book above all else called Banishing Burnout by Dr. Maslach. It goes through these steps in way more detail than I've gone through here, and it has awesome plans on dealing with every aspect of burnout. Almost like a checklist. It's really great. I would recommend reading that and seeing if there's something you can do. Reach out to friends, reach out to others in the community, and ask people how they deal with burnout, how they have dealt with it. Don't accept it's time to leave the company as an answer to burnout, because it's not. It is the one piece of advice I hear more than anything, and it's the worst piece of advice. It is very rarely the right answer, because all you're doing is avoiding the problem and getting ready to fall into the same trap again if you don't deal with the things that cause burnout. I could have left Etsy years ago. But if I did, I'm pretty certain I would be dealing with burnout again by now. Actually dealing with this is way more difficult than just like quitting and finding a new job, but it's the right way to do it. Thank you. Oh, can you use the mic?
So thinking back on the project that you started out with, implementing Elasticsearch, how could you have done it differently to avoid burnout? Would it have been engaging somebody else to help you? Would it have been, devoting less time to? What could you recommend for those of us who are very prone to, go into the same trap? Absolutely. The very first thing is engage somebody else. Have more than one person working on this project. If you can't dedicate 2 people to working on a major project, then maybe it's not the right time to do it. Maybe you need to look at the value to the business and figure out when it would be possible to dedicate more people to it. Set chunks of work to be done. Set definite goals, like, have different phases. Get this done, get that done, get the next bit done, and work through it. And absolutely do not start working crazy hours to try and get it done. If you can avoid that bit, it forces you to better plan the amount of time it's going to take to get something done. If you assume you have flexibility in your schedule and you can just work another 6 hours every day if you need to, it just causes poor habits. So those are the things I would say. Start with those. And yes, it does mean that these things might take longer to get done, but that's a business decision rather than a personal fulfillment or a decision.
What do you think was the impact of you working remotely on you burning out?
I think it made it easier for me to burn out. I think it because people weren't there to see what I was doing and see me working all night, nobody was there to stop me doing it. And the people who were around me, I could just convince them and say, hey, don't worry, this is really important, it'll be fine. It made it worse. So as a result of that, I have to have a lot more discipline in what I do, in the way I work, in the way I behave. Conversely, now people on my team watch for these signs, not just in me, but in everyone around us. If there are people working online 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, we call them out on it. We say, hey, I saw you send an email at this time of night. Why? Every time we call them out on this. And it curtails that behavior. Yes, sometimes you do need to do it. There will be reasons why you need to work late every now and then. But don't let it be an excuse and let it get worse. I think that's the goal there.
So for those of us who aren't on like amazing teams with great colleagues and great managers, do you have any advice for how we can manage up and ask for help or offer suggestions?
Yes. So this goes to the point, I think, of weak leadership. It can be difficult to have those conversations. If you, as an engineer, if you feel you have some ideas that can help here in a situation, you have to have that conversation with your management, with your leadership. If you can't do that, if you cannot even discuss the topic, actually, in that case, I don't know what to say. That would be really bad. But if you can engage with people, if you can have that conversation, it's an opportunity for you. You have to actually end up being somebody who steps up and takes some of that responsibility and says, okay, we'll take the working late example, right? There are people on your teams who are working late. You can step up and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to watch for this behavior because it's bad. How can we deal with it? How can we engage other people in it?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Not all companies do this, but I know that my company, for example, has counselors that you can talk to, that even if your manager is weak and their manager is weak and you just feel like there's nowhere to go, often you can go anonymously to a counselor, and a lot of people may not know that that's a service offered by their HR department. So you might ask an HR rep or send an email to HR and just find out, is that a thing? And they may even outsource. It may be like something they just pay so you can talk to a shrink or something. But it's I know that there are a lot of times things other than going through your management that you can do to get the help you need.
That's fantastic. I didn't know this was a thing. Nicole, this is a thing. You should do this. Yeah.
So my intention is actually to share the URL to this talk to everyone at my employee place.
I will tweet out a link to the slides and the video when it's up.
I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about the role that responsibilities outside of work can play. You mentioned your family a couple of times, and I feel like either that could be a restraining influence or it can be just a way to diversify your burnout. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this is one of the things that actually really helped me get through my burnout when I took my vacation. I needed to evaluate and find other things to fill my time. Okay, because I'm not allowed to work past like a certain time a night, and now I have to do other things. I took up a martial art. I took up a hobby. I do photography. And it means that I have something that's important to me outside work. Work isn't my identity anymore. I made it my identity by wanting to prove myself so much and make it such an important part of my life. When I had to change that, something else had to fill those roles. Time with family, hobbies outside work, creative things that you do. We all need creative outlets. I'm not a very creative person, I'll tell you now. I have great difficulty appreciating art, for example. I can't do it. But I had to find other ways to express myself and other things that bring me fulfillment other than sitting typing out code at a keyboard all day. Extremely important, yes. Hi, Shane.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you for this talk. As someone who's burned out at 2 jobs, one mildly and one an inflaming ball of fire and wreckage, this is a really, really important topic that is rarely touched upon in our industry. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to realize that this impacts every industry. We're not unique in this, right? Every industry in every country, everywhere, there are people who go through occupational burnout, and we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about this, and there are other things that we really don't talk about. I touched on the fact that this looks like clinical depression. We don't talk about mental illness very much. We don't talk about other things that cause us struggle in our industry, and we should. We have to talk about these. We have to discuss them. We have to be open about them. Otherwise, all of us in this room are going to suffer unnecessarily. So thank you, everyone, for coming.